We declare ourselves to be greater than our fathers, for we captured the town of seven-gated Thebes. Though we led a weaker force against a stronger wall, we trusted in the portents of the gods and the assistance of Zeus, but they perished through their recklessness. So don't you liken us to our fathers in honor. Our previous video culminated with a reading of the first and only surviving line of the lost epic, the Sons of the Seven Against Thebes, the Epigonoi. The Epigonoi was one of many now lost early Greek epics, the epic cycle. The third video of this series will reflect on what we know about the Epigonoi as an epic and its place amongst the cyclic poems. But in this video, we'll consider the myth. We'll look at the entire story from the sons' childhood through to their later travails and adventures. There's nothing to suggest, however, that the lost epic Epigonoi treated the entirety of their stories. It probably just focused on the second siege of Thebes itself, just like, say, the Iliad is not an account of the Trojan War from the judgment of Paris through to the sack. Welcome to Ancient Classics. If you haven't already, remember to like and subscribe. I'm not usually much of a fan of presentations about ancient Greek myths per se. They often seem to presuppose that there's some kind of canonical version, and of course it's rarely or ever the case. Most myths develop through various tellings and traditions, though of course sometimes a particular version gains a special prestige or is given some kind of overriding legitimacy by dint of being the version told in some kind of authorized established text, whether a holy book or just a work of unparalleled and unquestioned excellence such as the two Homeric epics. So sweeping all that aside and just saying this is the myth is reductive and misleading, but one has to start somewhere, otherwise one just won't get started. Furthermore, it's usually the telling, the treatment of a myth that's the interesting part, each being its own artistic artifact worthy of study. But the only tellings of this myth at any length, I mean Apollodorus and Diodorus Siculus, are a bit rubbish. So, what are our sources? Not many at all. Apollodorus and Diodorus both wrote summaries, and they weren't the only ones to. There was also this guy called Proclus. His work only survives, though, through brief quotations and summaries of summaries in various works from late antiquity. Then we have our friends the scholiasts, ancient literary commentators whose annotations have found their way into the manuscript tradition. Their comments on a surviving text often refer to other texts and myths from extraneous sources, much as the inheritors of that tradition do today. We have allusions and brief references to the Sons of the Seven in several more canonical texts, such as the quotation from the Iliad with which we opened, and a few passing references in Pausanias. Then we have fragments of plays treating the theme. Sophocles wrote a tragedy on the Epigonoi, but they're not much use to us. So to get to grips with the myth of the Epigonoi, we have to go back to the earlier generation, the Seven Against Thebes. I explained the basic features of that myth in the very first video on this channel, so I'll give only the briefest recap here. After the fall of Oedipus, his two sons, Polynices and Eteocles, share the throne. Cursed by Oedipus, they fall out. Eteocles remains in control of Thebes, and Polynices retreats to exile in Argos at the court of Adrastus. He raises an army to take Thebes, an army of 7 champions. Their names vary from version to version, but the main guys are Polynices himself, Tydeus, Capaneus, and Amphiaraus the prophet. Amphiaraus is unwilling to fight because, yeah, he's a prophet, so he knows how it'll end. But Polynices bribes Amphiaraus' wife Eriphyle with a dread gift, the cursed necklace of Harmonia, and she then persuades her husband to go to war. So the 7 champions and Adrastos lead their armies against Thebes. They fail to take the city, and each of the 7 dies. Their bodies are left to rot and to be picked upon by the beasts and birds. The immediate aftermath provided a rich seam of source material for tragedians. It's in one such tragedy, Euripides' Hecatides, the Suppliant Women, in which we encounter the Sons of the Seven for the first time. I mean, first time in narrative terms. It's, of course, not the earliest source. The eponymous Suppliant Women are the mothers of the 7, who have come to Attica to beg Theseus to intervene and procure the proper burial of their sons. The mothers bring their grandchildren along, the Sons of the Seven themselves. Off stage, Theseus leads an army against Thebes and returns with the bodies of 5 of the 7, all except Amphiaraus, who got sucked down into Hades, and Polynices, who's Theban. The 5 corpses are cremated, and the sons come on stage carrying their father's ashes and speaking of vengeance. Then, in a classic Deus Ex Machina scene, the goddess Athene appears on stage, and enjoins the sons to take their vengeance. I say this to the sons of the Argives. When you come of age, you'll destroy the city of Ismenus and avenge the slaughter of your fathers. You, Aegialeus, will arise as a young general in your father's stead, and the son of Tydeus, whom his father named Diomedes, will come from Aetolia. Once your beards have grown upon your jaws, lead the bronze-clad army of the descendants of Danaus against the seven-towered town of the Cadmeans. You'll be a curse to them, the now-grown cubs of lions, destroyers of the city. There's no other way. Across Greece, you will be called the Epigonoi, yours the theme of songs for later generations. Such will be your divinely aided expedition. A decade later, the sons of the Seven have come of age and are ready to launch their expedition against Thebes. Time to take stock. Who were the sons of the Seven? Just as the identity of the Seven themselves varies from version to version, so do their sons. Some are common ground, though. All sources agree that amongst the sons of the Seven were the son of Polynices, Tharsandros, or Latinized to Thersander, the son of Tydeus, Diomedes, that great hero of the Iliad, the son of Capaneus, the one who scaled the walls of Thebes and got struck down by Zeus. His son was Sthenelos. He features briefly as a pal of Diomedes in the Iliad, and this video opened with a quote from him. The sons of Amphiaraus the prophet, Alcmaeon and Amphilochus, the son of Parthenopaeus, the pretty son of Atalanta, Promachus. Also amongst the sons of the Seven is a guy called Euryalus. He's mentioned briefly in the Iliad in the catalogue of ships alongside Diomedes and Sthenelos. He gets to kill a couple of Trojans later on in Book 6 and gets KO'd in a boxing match in Book 23. In the Iliad, he's called the son of Mecistheus. Mecistheus is not one of Aeschylus' seven against Thebes, but like I say, the precise identity of the seven varies from telling to telling. That leaves Polydorus as the final son of the seven, which of the seven I don't know, possibly Hippomedon or Eteoclus. Nor do we know much or anything about Polydorus himself. Though we shouldn't forget Aegialeus, the son of Adrastos, the king of Argos, who led the first siege, but who's conventionally not numbered amongst the seven. Meanwhile in Thebes, the old prophet Tiresias, whose story stretches back to Oedipus and earlier, he's still kicking about, and he has a daughter, Manto, or perhaps her name is Daphne. Or perhaps he has two daughters. I don't know. The ruler of Thebes is Eteocles' son Laodamas, i.e. Tharsandros' first cousin. So the sons of the seven have been enjoined, according to Euripides at least, to avenge their fathers when they grow up. But what's the immediate inciting incident for the siege? Well, for whatever reason, Tharsandros just decides it's time to take Thebes and to succeed where his father Polynices failed. Just like his father, Tharsandros has to persuade the fellow sons of the seven and Aegialeus to join this campaign against Thebes. Once again, like father, like son, one of the sons of Amphiaraus, Alcmaeon, is reluctant to join the campaign. This is a big problem because an oracle has foretold that the campaign will only be successful if Alcmaeon leads it. So, how is Tharsandros to persuade Alcmaeon? Again, he follows the pattern set by their parents. Recall how Polynices had bribed Eriphyle, Amphiaraus' wife, Alcmaeon's mother, that is, and he bribed her with the cursed necklace of Harmonia. Well, Tharsandros happens also to be in possession of the dress of Harmonia, so he bribes Eriphyle with that, and thus bribed she manages to persuade her son, Alcmaeon, to go to war, just as she had his father. And yeah, you can probably see where this is heading, but we'll get to that later. The army of the sons of the seven and Aegialeus set off from Argos against Thebes. They encamp near a place called Glissas in Boeotia, or Boeotia, whatever you're going to call it. It is perhaps there that they see a couple of strange statues, a dog chasing a fox. These statues are none other than the dog Lailaps and the monstrous baby-eating fox, the Temusian fox. We encountered them in our video on the top 5 classical dogs with Ovid's version of the story. Several years earlier, a fox had been sent by the gods to terrorize Thebes. It ate babies and could never be caught. So the disgraced hero Cephalus hunted it down with his hound Lailaps, who could never be outrun. This paradox, the uncatchable quarry and the ineluctable hound, was resolved when the two creatures were turned into stone. And the sons of the seven stumble upon them now. the armies of the Sons of the Seven and the Thebans clash near Glissas. Possibly Promachus is killed because Pausanias says he's buried nearby. Laodamas, the king of Thebes, kills Agialus, reversing his father's, Adrastos' survival of the first war. You can kind of get the gist here. We're in classic remake/sequel territory, where each major plot element either replicates or self-consciously reverses the original. The Seven Against Thebes, that is. We'll come back to the idea of the Epigonoi proper as a sequel in the next video. According to Apollodorus, Laodamas is killed by Alcmaeon, but according to Pausanias he survives. Either way, the Theban army is defeated. The remnants of the Theban army retreat to Thebes, temporarily at least. On the advice of the prophet Tiresias, the majority of the Thebans flee the city and go into exile. Tiresias promptly dies when they reach a spring called Tilphusa. I don't know why. I guess because he's old. With Thebes now more or less abandoned, the army of the Sons attack and sack the city and tear down its walls. Some Thebans remained and are taken captive. Amongst them is Tiresias' daughter, Manto, aka Daphne. More on her later. At some point now, Alcmaeon learns that his mother Eriphyle was bribed by Thassandros. Perhaps he also learns about the fact that she had been bribed by Polynices in the earlier war too. Indeed, there's one tradition apparently that just before Amphiaraus went off to war in the first campaign, he told his son that his mother was not a very nice woman and that he was to kill her when he grew up, which is a kind of happy family dynamic one expects from Greek myths, I guess. Either way, Alcmaeon kills his mother, whether before or after the attack on Thebes. From the few fragments we have, it seems that Sophocles' tragedy, the Epigonoi, centers around this moment. We have a few quotes from that play from various sources. If I read the best ones, it might just seem like I'm gratuitously promulgating misogynistic tropes. So instead, here's a brief, friendly uncle exchange. You are the brother of a husband-killing woman. And you killed your mother with your own hands. That's probably the end of the War of the Sons of the Seven proper. Alcmaeon, having killed his mother, is pursued by Furies. Of course. He eventually finds absolution, but finds himself having even more scrapes and doing some really inadvisable stuff, like giving the cursed dress and necklace of Harmonia to his new wife. Because, I mean, what better gift can you think of for your loved ones? I mean, hell, I'm rubbish at presents too. But if Statius' description of the necklace is anything to go by, well, Vulcan of Lemnos, so the old story goes, was fed up with the fact that his wife was cheating on him with Mars, and punishments did nothing to stand in the way of a love caught red-handed, and avenging chains didn't prove much of a penalty. So he made this wedding gift for the marriage of Harmonia. The Cyclopes worked on it, even though they'd been trained to work on larger projects, and those famous craftsmen, the Telchines, lent a friendly hand too. But most of the hard work was Vulcan's. He encircles it with emeralds, blooming with hidden fire, and with adamant beaten out with cursed figures, the eyes of Gorgons, the burnt-out ashes of a thunderbolt left on a Sicilian anvil, the shining crests of green snakes, the lamentable fruit of the Hesperides, the awful gold of the fleece of Phrixus. Then he works in various pestilences, and the most potent lock from the fury Tisiphone's black hair, and the most awful force which empowers Venus's girdle. These he cunningly smears with cursed moon goo, and pours poison over the whole thing. And I'm sure the dress was equally lovely. So that's what Alcmaeon gives to his wife, and it doesn't end there. And indeed, there seems to have been an entire other lost epic, the Alcmaeonis or something, about his travails. But our main sources are obscure references in Ovid's Met and an interminably tedious account in Apollodorus, which I'm not even going to try to summarize. Several of the Sons of the Seven partake in the Trojan War. They're of that generation, you see. Like I say, Euryalus and Sthenelus get a mention in the Iliad, but the greatest of the Sons of the Seven is, of course, Diomedes, who, in Achilles' absence, has one of the best Aristides in the Iliad. And he then goes on to found several cities in Italy, I think. Speaking of founding cities, according to Herodotus, Alcmaeon's brother Amphilochus goes on to found Poseidion. a coastal port in or around Syria or Turkey, which some have identified with the archaeological site of Almina, which may have been one of the key points of cultural and economic exchange between early archaic Greece and the outlying ports of the Assyrian Empire in the 8th and 7th centuries. No idea what happened to the other sons of the seven, but Manto, aka Daphne, Teresis' daughter, who for some reason stayed behind at Thebes and got taken captive. There are a few stories about her, all inconsistent. By most accounts, her captors dedicated her to the Temple of Apollo at Delphi. Some say she ended up getting promoted to the role of Pythia. Not a bad gig, I guess, if you're into that kind of thing, by which I mean drug-induced trips and obscure hexametric ramblings. And actually, according to Diodorus, her poetry was later ripped off by none other than Homer himself. Or Manto gets married and goes off somewhere but cries all the time. I don't know. Manto also makes an appearance in Dante's Inferno, but that's mostly riffing off a different tradition whereby she ends up in Italy and the city of Mantua was named after her. No idea where that came from. My annotated copy of the Inferno suggests it comes via Servius, the Virgilian commentator. I don't know, Delphi, Mantua, same difference, I guess. So that's the myth of the Sons of the Seven, for what it's worth. One of the less known of the ancient Greek myths, but all the usual tropes. A bunch of heroes, avenging and bettering their fathers, a scary monster, treachery, matricide, being chased by furies, cursed clothes, all that good stuff. But now we've got all that out of the way, we can focus on the epic itself, the Epigonoi. But that is for next time. Till then, like and subscribe, and we'll be back soon-ish.